Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Hey, someone addressed me by name. I appreciate that. All right, let's spark the future and work inspired and all that good stuff. This session is entitled Nintex, Real-World Cross-Product Solutions Presented and Inspected. We had to come up with that title months upon months ago. And it's not too far off the mark. It's actually pretty close to the mark. But if I were to come up with that title today, I would have morphed it ever so slightly. I would have morphed it into Workflow Without Borders. Yeah, I enjoy a play on words as much as the next person. But no, it really is, there's a method to the madness because, and this is very reflective in the original title and very reflective in what how we described everything. They're leaving because I changed the title ever so slightly? Seriously, guys, it's like only slightly different. It's a slight change in spirit. No, I don't think. Look, I'm not the world's most great presenter in the world, but I'm not that bad. So I'm assuming someone got a phone call. Let's just press on, shall we? All right, Workflow Without Borders. And what do I mean by this? Well, I mean this. The days of us being able to think of a world in which SharePoint is the center of the universe, well, they're numbered. They are very, very numbered. In fact, well, notice if you look in Office 365, you don't see the word SharePoint there. You see plenty of SharePoint technology embedded in it, but it's all about the services being offered to you rather than the product that delivers them. I actually think that's a very, very good thing. But one of the reasons why that's necessary is because the entire world is now made up of services as opposed to products that you stick in your data center. This isn't only about the cloud, but the cloud makes it easy. So certainly in your organization, even if you are completely committed to doing everything in SharePoint libraries, I bet you've got some people out there doing OneDrive stuff. If you've got anyone with a Microsoft Surface, they're sticking some things in OneDrive. Let's not kid ourselves. In fact, let's really not kid ourselves and admit that people are using Dropbox. And this is not, it's not either or, some people are using both. Heck, I use both. And Dropbox and Microsoft are friends, you know, hand in hand skipping through the meadow these days. It's a good thing. And there are even some other things that are not necessarily as warm and fuzzy, but people put things there. And actually, it's not so much whether you put things there, but you will do business with vendors, contractors, other companies, your customers, and they put stuff there. It's not just about content storage. Imagine a situation where you have a CRM environment. Could be dynamic CRM, could be Salesforce. Again, both. This is Microsoft. This is a company that gets along these days with Microsoft very nice. It could be your email system, delivered through Exchange, which is part of Office 365, but behind the scenes it's delivered a very different way. How about infrastructure services? Do you work with virtual machines at all? Well, you might need to spin up Rackspace servers or Azure virtual machines or even Amazon stuff if you really need to. Marketing automation services, they're all there. There are a zillion different utility services out there for doing language translation, for doing currency calculations, social media, data stores, more traditional things. Some of these can live on premises. Some of these live in the cloud. Most of them are absolutely available in the cloud because the cloud is the ultimate service bus. And we're available in the cloud, no two ways about it. But the point is, out of all of these services, we're obviously a workflow company at Nintex. We loves ourselves some business processes. And we've been finding, based on the way you've been telling us you use our products, that the days of it being a simple approval of a document in a SharePoint library, well, that's not going away. That's still very much alive. But that is a drop in the bucket compared to all the different kinds of business problems that exist today. They don't have borders. Cross-product workflows matter, which means something that involves built-in SharePoint workflow or built-in Salesforce workflow or built-in SAP workflow, it's just going to scratch one tiny itch in one part of the corporate body. We need to look at the whole picture. I'll give you some examples that come from real life. This is a company, an organization called Zalcom. They're based in Australia, which you ought to be able to tell by looking at that iconic building. Australians know what it is. It's Parliament. But it's in Canberra. And they do they provide services to Australian government agencies, federal government agencies to be exact. So a lot of procurement, a lot of participation in RFP processes and requests for information and so on, asset management, audits, licensing, that kind of stuff. And they need to be very compliant. They have requests for quotes, they need to capture leads. It's a long list of things. All right, that's the business problem that they need to solve. And there was a time you might try to put everything in one place and work out of that place. As it turns out, when you talk to them, what they need is to integrate with Outlook, which actually means integrate with Exchange as well. They need to do automated document generation in Word. They have customer relationship management concerns, and they need to do, at the time they wound up involving Nintex, Salesforce was, they were moving to that. I'm not sure what they moved from, and it doesn't really matter. Xero is a emerging and rather popular in some parts of the planet accounting system. They needed to integrate with that as well. Now, and above board software asset management. And the glue between all of them was Nintex. Nintex working inside of SharePoint, but yeah. If you're not thinking of Nintex as the glue between a lot of apps, that's okay. If you use this for a lot of localized business problems inside of your SharePoint sites, it's not a problem. We still do that. We love doing that. But we don't only do that. So here's, if you want some metrics, a 20% saving in sales productivity, which actually means a lot. They spend a whole lot more time selling. Customers get quotes 3 times faster than they used to, and accuracy has gone through the roof. One of the reasons why you automate processes is to prevent mistakes, or at least reduce them radically. That totally happened. So here's what I'd like to do. I can't demo Zalcom's solution because it's proprietary government stuff. What I can do, however, is take you over here and, yep, there we go, and show you a couple of workflows that we have that illustrate some of the things that are being done for that particular solution. So here's what, let's see. In particular, they integrate with Salesforce.com and they integrate with DocuSign. So let me show you a couple of workflows where that happens. Let's go over here. This is in Office 365. I believe Zalcom is working on premises, but it works the same way on premises or online. I'm going to start here. And I've got, in this particular case, something in 2 different places. Let's do Salesforce.com first, because this is a very realistic scenario, especially if you're transitioning from one system to another. If you've gone through a merger or an acquisition, you might find that 2 different companies use 2 different systems, and you can't really force a complete conversion of everything from one to the other. So you may very well find that you need to capture leads and get them into the right system depending on which division it is, which product it is, which location it is, any of those things. And so let's open this workflow, which is designed to handle leads at a situation kind of like having a booth at a conference or something like that. You've probably not encountered those, but it happens all the time. And when we open this workflow, we can capture these things in a lot of different ways. In fact, why don't I flip over here for a moment and show it to you in a Windows phone. This is our mobile app. I wasn't going to do mobile yet, but it's just too tempting. So let's say I come over here and I want to submit a sales lead. And I'm very likely to do it on my phone if I am on a conference floor. So last name, let's see, what should I do? Try to think. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. So let's say Kent Clark. Email address, CK, whoops, that's not what I meant. Now let's go back to there, CK at Daily Planet dot example. Why am I using example? Because that is a reserved domain name for examples, which means I can't get sued by any company that really is named Daily Planet. It's actually really important. All right, and this is the important bit. What interest do I have? Well, I like the GC 1000 series, whatever that is, and I'm going to submit this thing. Now, it'll submit pretty quickly. In fact, it already has submitted. It was in my outbox for a minute. More on that as time goes by. But let's go back here. Yeah, this is the workflow that's being run right now. And I have, the very first thing it does is it looks at which major product line the person has expressed an interest in. And depending on what it is, it's going to log something into Microsoft Dynamics CRM, or it's going to log something into Salesforce.com. And what does that look like? Well, we branch and do one or the other. By the way, if you were waiting for a switch operator in Office 365, it's there now. That happened a couple of weeks ago. We've been later on, I'll be talking about a number of things we've been adding to the Office 365 feature set, and we'll go on and on about that. But here, we're creating a lead in Salesforce. We're determining who is supposed to take care of that type of customer in that lead, and then we retrieve the user's record and add a task to it. And we do the exact same things no matter which CRM system you've got. And what does that look like when we go to Salesforce? Looks a little bit like this. They log you out really quickly, so there was no point in me logging in early. Please let me not have mistyped that. Yay, cool. Let's go over here to leads. And if everything went really, really well, and it's going, but it hasn't happened yet, I should see Clark Kent appear there within a minute or two, and about a minute or two later, I should see a task appear. The last time I ran this, well, Bert Bobbsey, one of the Bobbsey twins, became a hot sales lead. We can track this another time, but this is an example of connecting to. I'm using SharePoint as the glue, and Nintex sitting on top of SharePoint as the glue that puts everything together, and I can keep track of everything that's happening by watching the list items inside of SharePoint lists. So I'm using SharePoint as a good nerve center and a process portal in order to keep track of everything that's happening. And I'm also using SharePoint's workflow engine, but I've designed the entire process and have made all the connections using Nintex. Now, I can do another one of these things. How about we involve DocuSign? DocuSign and Nintex are BFFs. We announced a very tight partnership several months back, almost a year ago at the Worldwide Partner Conference. And what I'm going to do here is issue, well, I'll show you the workflow in a minute, but the very first thing I should probably do is submit something. So I want to enroll in a beta program. And let's see, is there anything else I really have to have? Let's see, Richard.row, no, Richard R. That should be enough. And let's save that. This should kick off a workflow that should execute pretty quickly. Now, I will point out a couple of things. When you integrate with other software in the cloud, the way you do that varies quite a bit depending on which product you use. So at the moment, I'm logged in here as Richard Rowe. I'm going to jump over here to a different browser where I'm logged in as someone named Jane Doe. The reason I'm doing that is because Jane is in charge of all of our, Jane's in charge of the beta program. She oversees all of that. And the DocuSign documents that go out for signatures, they're handled by Jane. And what I'm doing here is waiting for something to show up. An email from Nintex asking if it's okay for this workflow to act on Jane's behalf. We're using OAuth. It's the same way that you can log into Office 365 using your domain credentials, or how you can log into DocuSign using your Office 365 login. This, if I am nice and clever and remember what it is I have to do, I will only have to do this once. And it'll remember this for, well, pretty much ever. Let's see, what is her password? I think that's it. Yay, good. And do I want to have Nintex remember this? Yes, please. Do not ask me this every single time. All right, we're good. We're done. And that means if I come back over here to Richard, I should see in just a moment, let's go to his email box, a request to sign something. Oh, wait, that's not the time zone locally, but it will do. And this is logged into the same thing, so clearly the email has arrived. Here we go. And so now I can review it, and so on. Now, we are very fond of this approach to doing digital signatures. Yes, you can scan something and just embed it as a JPEG in a document, but that's really easy to challenge in court. This is going to guarantee that I read it, that I saw it, or that I got an email about it, and that someone with that email address clicked here. And in fact, if I set up a DocuSign account, I can add ID information, I can add a scan of my signature, I can add more things to prove that, yes, I signed this. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish this and we'll move on. No, I do not feel like creating an account right now, but I really should. It's not a bad thing at all. So we're going to leave it at that. That's going to get me enrolled in the beta program and so on and so forth, and life will be better for me as time goes by. But that's an example of interoperability between what you thought of as a simple SharePoint workflow with a much better design and management environment, but it's been kicked up a notch. It's been kicked up a notch because we have a store full of activities for integrating with a lot of different things in a lot of different places. And we actually grow this by several per month. In fact, not only that, we've been extending it so that, with a SDK, so that you can add things to it if you choose to do so. And you can control who can see it and who can't. It doesn't have to be something that's public. So that's that. I do want to bring up one other thing since I'm in the designer and I'm seeing this button. This is the feedback button. It's another thing we were able to do because we run in Office 365 so faithfully. In fact, Microsoft is now using this in some of its products, but it's called User Voice, and it's a cloud service that we were just able to embed in our product. It's how you can tell us what you like and don't like and what you would like to see next. And in fact, we'll tell you what we're working on. Like, we're working on this feature, we're planning to get that taken care of, et cetera, and you can vote on things other people are asking for. We absolutely use this as input as to what we do and when we do it. Just thought it would be a nice thing to bring up, because that factors into a lot of things we have coming down the pike. All right, let's go back to here, because I want to point out something. There is a key philosophy to the way we do integration at Nintex. It's different from the way a lot of other people go about it. It's not about the bus. Some people are all about the bus, not us. Not us. Thank you for picking up on that. The deal is this. You got a workflow. At a certain point, the workflow needs to go get something from somewhere else. Let's say it wants to log a lead to Salesforce. If you create a bus, you might create a generic-looking object called lead. It might be part of a collection object called leads, and you'll map that to Salesforce.com in the background, but the person building the workflow will never notice. If you're a developer, this looks like a really, really, really good idea. It's how you're supposed to write code, actually. Abstract away stuff, create a middle tier or a data access tier. I get it. Sometimes I am a developer, but sometimes I'm not a developer. Sometimes I'm a low-code, no-code, declarative citizen developer, and sometimes I'm just a user, and sometimes I'm an IT guy. And the rest of us, well, let me show you what I'm talking about. The appeal to this is that I don't need to know the details about Salesforce.com. The other appeal is that if I decide that I don't want to use Salesforce and I would prefer to use Microsoft Dynamics CRM, I don't need to change everything. I just keep talking to my generic objects that are being held in my bus, and I point the bus at the different service. Okay, I like this. There's some appeal to this, but there's also a hidden problem. You see, does anyone use Microsoft Dynamics CRM? Does anyone use Salesforce? Do you think they're the same? Hint, they're not. They are very much not the same. They're both actually very nice services. I like them both for different things. There are some companies, as you can see, that use both. However, they don't offer the same set of services. There's overlap, but there are also some unique differences. The other thing, well, that's issue number one. And that kind of means if you're going to switch from one to the other, you probably want to use what's special about the new one, which means if you were to go from Dynamics CRM to Salesforce, well, you kind of have to drop the objects in the bus and load new ones in anyway, which means you've just doubled the work you have to do. I don't want to commit those resources. The other thing is I'm hiding the API from the user. My guess is someone that wants to use Salesforce.com uses Salesforce.com, logs into it, knows how to speak its language. Same thing would be true for Dynamics CRM. I don't want to use generic terms. I want to present a UI that looks exactly like the target application. What's more, I don't want to have to document and teach everybody about everything I'm keeping in my bus. So yes, I'm making an argument against a certain type of middleware, but I'm not saying don't use middleware. I'm saying take a different approach, because it's really all about APIs. It is so totally about APIs. Don't take my word for it. Take Gartner's word for it. Take Forrester's word for it. Take other analysts' work for it. They know what, they look at this all the time. And you can use a bus for highly stable things where you're managing transactions and doing a lot of things like that. For a lot of integration, especially ad hoc citizen-style integration, oh, it's all about the APIs in a big, big way. You want to talk to Salesforce? Use a component that speaks Salesforce's language, looks like it's Salesforce, is not at all mysterious, because the odds are the woman or man that's building this workflow knows something about Salesforce and wants to capitalize on it. Who cares about a generic lead? We've used both products in the past, and generally speaking, we've got some people that would be likely to build this workflow, and they absolutely know where they want to send the data that comes from a captured lead. You want to talk to Dynamics CRM? Talk to Dynamics CRM and know that you're doing it. They both provide APIs. Drop in a component into workflow that is very understandable and it doesn't hide any details, but deals with all the connectivity issues and all the relative pain. Now, we have new and upcoming things happening that should make this very, very nice. Because I deliberately showed you, remember when I had to stop and authorize the workflow to act on my behalf as it ran? Now, security people in the audience should be applauding that, because otherwise I, as a workflow designer, could always have a workflow act like you and then send somebody something to sign with your name on it, and you might have had nothing to do with it. But here's the thing that we don't like about the way OAuth works in general. It's reactive, which means you always get a logon prompt at an inopportune time. So if you're not checking your email when I need a signature from you, we're going to have a bad time. So let's not have a bad time. Let's do something brand spanking new. Let's see, which of these multitude or myriad windows do I want? I want this one. Now, nope, not that one. Not that one. There we go. Here's a workflow where we collect DocuSign signatures for any particular document. It's a general purpose workflow. It's actually a sub-workflow. If you're an Nintex customer, we call it a user-defined action or a UDA. So you can just plug this in any workflow you want, then it will go get a DocuSign signature. It will then retrieve the status periodically to see what's happened, and then based on what took place, if it was declined or voided, we react accordingly. But if it was completed, we'll bring down a copy and party on. Well, check this out. There's a brand new icon here. This is live. It's real. It exists today. If you're a customer, go download the latest version of Nintex Workflow. It's in there. It's called Connection Manager. And this allows me to create. Is anyone here who uses Nintex? Why, thank you. And who uses constants? Good. It should be a larger number of people. Constants are good things, but that's all right. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to say that constants people, they're great, but again, I used constants to provide the username and password for Jane Doe. I still needed Jane to authorize the workflow to act on her behalf. You know what this does? I have the ability to create an object that is a valid connection, and I can do it in advance and then connect it to these actions. So I am waiting for this screen to resolve. Let's try that one more time. And if for some reason I'm running into some bandwidth concerns, I will simply gracefully describe in vivid detail what should be on this dialog box. There we go. Yeah, you really didn't want me to do that. All right, so is the scope to a user or to a site coming soon? The ability to scope it in more places and decide who gets to use it. But in the meantime, it's absolutely great for the person designing the workflow. So you can reuse this throughout the site or for a user wherever she or he may be. The provider, we're adding more and more to this right now, but now it's conveniently DocuSign and Dynamics CRM and Salesforce. Well, let's do DocuSign. So how do I want to name this? I'm going to call this My Awesome Connectorama Vitch. Username, whatever I want it to be. Oh, I should actually use something that's real, shouldn't I? Give me a second. And okay, so I'm using, if the entire company had one DocuSign account that we used, this is actually perfect for that kind of scenario. And let's see, what's Jane's password? Okay, save it. I can test this connection in advance. And I will get hassled by the man if anything goes wrong. But in the meantime, what I'm expecting to find is if I go over to Jane, let's see, where is she? Yep. Here's a request to authorize DocuSign. So I'm getting the authorization now during the design phase. We still need to do this, but we're going to do this at a time of our own choosing. Now, by virtue of having done that, I have this fun connection object. And now when I need to do something that involves DocuSign, instead of you stuffing somebody's email address and then saying, yo, workflow, get an authorization from her when the time comes, you just indicate which connection you want to use. And that is it. Now, that's a little geeky, But that just did a whole lot of people a world of good, and we're expanding Connection Manager to just about everything as time goes by, and we'll be adding things to it to make IT love it. IT will love it already. IT will love it a lot more soon. That's one of a long list of things. In truth, I'm not announcing any one magical, life-changing event in this particular thing, but I'm introducing a whole bunch of little things that if you add them together, just made Nintex customers' lives a lot easier. And Connection Manager is absolutely, positively one of them. Let's go back to PowerPoint land and talk about something else, namely mobility. Satya Nadella said something at the Gartner Symposium or IT Expo. It's the same event, but based on your badge, you get to go to one or the other. But some of the things are in common, and this was one of them. And he said something great. We've taken it to heart at Nintex. He said, mobility is not about my phone. Mobility is about me. Meaning that if you think mobility is about creating an app, you've missed the point. Mobility is about putting what the user needs in the place they are in something that's convenient to them at the right time. Mobility actually looks like this. You've got a workflow. That workflow stops at some point and assigns someone a task. And when you do that, that's probably going to start life as a SharePoint task. Not a thing wrong with that. We move on, but it might also manifest inside of Outlook as an email message, or inside Link as an instant messaging chat or something to that effect. It might show up in the public cloud as an anonymous form that you embed in a page someplace, or an authenticated one. It might be an interaction that takes place between the workflow and a group of people on a social media channel of some sort. I'm using Yammer here because it's convenient and because it's one of the family, but it's not limited to that. And of course, yes, obviously it needs to show up on mobile devices when it needs to. But being wherever the user is matters a lot. And devices clearly matter, but it's really not about the device or the app. It's about getting what the user needs in the place they care about the most. Let me cue that up, and now I'm going to talk about apps. Now, this is a real customer scenario. It's a Europe-based owner and operator of a large number of restaurants and pubs. They do safety inspections and quality control inspections on a very regular basis. And they've got a lot of locations. And it used to look kind of like this stuff in the background. Paper stuff that had to be filled out manually, and paper stuff that had to be sent in, and paper stuff that had to be read and checked to see if anything was awry. Now, it looks a whole lot different and a whole lot more convenient. And it's whatever page is necessary, and it uses whatever interface is easiest. Here's another example. This is an airline that uses this for instructor training and assessment reports. And it goes on and on. Well, let me show you. Who's using Nintex mobile apps, may I ask? Okay, a handful of you, and thank you very much. I appreciate that. Who's got Nintex Forms? Nintex Forms people, you have Nintex mobile apps. You might not realize it, but you have them. Obviously, any Nintex mobile form can be made viewable in a mobile browser with one extra click. But you can, with one more click, make it viewable inside of a mobile app. And there's a big payoff to it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, let's come back. Oh, there we go. Let's come back over here. And I still have a live connection to this. Life is good. So let's go a little bit crazy with filling out a form. Now I'm going to go over here. That's we already did a sales lead, right? Safety inspection. This is what I want. So the title will be room. Let's see. What is this room? 105. No, S105A. Okay? Inspection date and time. We'll do this, however, I'm using a Windows phone because I'm a team player, and at least for the purposes of this demo. And more importantly, I'm having a little bit of trouble connecting my iPhone to this particular device at the moment to remotely display its screen. I also have an iPad. I have a Surface. I don't have an Android tablet or phone handy, but we have mobile apps for all of these environments, and we make the user interface adapt to whatever the conventions are for that environment. But yeah, if you want to enter a date in Windows Phone, you get this nice little spinny, twisty UI. I like today's date and time. That seems perfectly appropriate. Now the location, we've had this for a while, but why do you have to enter your location? I have a much better plan. How about we just tap that and geo-coordinates appear? And if I want to be sure I'm in the right place, let's take a look at this on a map. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I am. Way to go, GPS. Sorry? You lost the display? Oh no, hang on a minute. Oh yeah, you did lose the display. Let's fix that. Hopefully by plugging it in. Yep, allow screen projection. Yes. Are you seeing it? Good. All right, so we're looking at coordinates, right? Did you see that? All right, let's tap this. There I am. That's good. Now, I will allow the workflow to calculate what the actual street address is. That's an easy thing to do. We'll just call a web service to do this. And the reason I'm not going to do it now is because I don't need to. I've indicated exactly where I am. We can solve that problem out of band. I want to keep going. I want to make data entry easy. So address is there, but it'll get filled in by the workflow later. Local contact. This feature's been around for a few months. I need to indicate who it is I'm working with here. So let's go ahead and search Active Directory. Now, we're doing a real-time connection for this, but we'll remember every resolved user, which means if we're offline, we'll remember the people we've worked with before, and you can still find them. All right, this severity, we'll come back for that, just because I want to go to items first. This part is new. Not the multiple line items thing. It's that if I were doing an inspection of a restaurant, I might want to look at the temperature the beer is being kept at in the basement and all that kind of stuff. I might want to look at the temperature of the food warmers in the kitchen. I might want to look at a lot of different things. I don't want to type in the part numbers and serial numbers for everything. So here's what I'm going to do. Brand spanking new, barcode scanning. Now, I don't actually eat s'more-flavored, chewy granola bars. I tend to prefer the peanut butter chocolate chip ones. But this is all they had in the speaker room. So scan like the wind. There we go. I like that. Rating is acceptable. Notes, I don't need any. That'll do. Let's add another one. And it's not just limited to universal product codes. Nintex loves everybody. So QR codes are fine. There we go. That's my actual broom key, so let's not lose that. And there we go. So that happens to be a URL, but that's okay. And now, severity. Is it low, is it medium, or is it high? I'm going to say high. And attachments. We've had support for this for a while. And what you can attach depends on the OS you're working with. I'm going to take a photo, and I'm going to take a photo of, well, who's got a sense of humor and very thick skin? Who can I pick on? You. I work with her, so this is not a controversial thing. Oh, where'd it go? Go back to that, filling that out. Now, I accidentally hit the key that got me out of this, but it's okay. Everything I was working on got saved as a draft. Try doing that with a web page. All right, let's go back here and let's add an attachment. And now, let's take a look. And There we go. Yep, I will accept that. And let's annotate this. This is the part that's new. Right there. Okay, we can save that. We can crop, we can do all the usual things you would expect and all of that. And so now, let's check that, and we are good to go. That's pretty much that in the wonderful world of mobile land. So everything we can do to reduce the amount of time it takes you to enter data is considered to be a very good thing. And if you'd like an example of this, let me find, let's back out of this and let's see if the data has arrived yet. If we'll hang on to the item and transmit it later when we have a live connection. You can even set it to not use metered connections and all that kind of stuff. But let's see, where are safety inspections? Okay, nope, it hasn't arrived yet, but here's an earlier one. We called a web service to convert the point into an address. It just works. You pick it up now. In fact, these, again, we don't believe in building mobile apps. That's a weird, strange thing for me to say. We believe in building apps, and with one click, they become mobile too. And when they're mobile, they're awesome. But this is fine. Look, here's the exact same form, and I can even edit it if I need to. It just works, looks fine and lovely inside of a browser. In fact, half of you didn't raise your hand when I asked you about Nintex forms, so check this out. This is what it's like to build one of these things. You click that. We look at the metadata on the list. We look at a template that's been created. We get those crazy kids together and we give birth to that. Now, it doesn't necessarily look exactly like this coming out of the gate. It'll be as a good faith attempt, but then you can edit the heck out of it. But it's better than giving you a blank page and saying you figure it out. And right now I have layouts for a desktop, for a smartphone's browser, for our mobile phone app, and our mobile tablet app. You know what I left out? A generic tablet app. If we just go at this with a browser inside of a generic tablet, it's going to use the desktop layout. There is a fallback plan. But I know that iPads have a different aspect ratio than Surfaces and so on. So for an iPad, I want something specific. And it's going to look like that. And of course, now I am free to make any changes to it I want, but that's all it takes. It's the same form. The same rules apply to everything for conditional formatting and validation and placement and everything. So we, in good faith, will make this form do double, triple, quintuple, octuple duty if it needs to. So it became a mobile app for the price of one click, which is not a big price at all. So we think being mobile is natural, normal, and shouldn't cost you extra in terms of sweat or time. It's an app. We'll run it anywhere you want. We just will. What are some other good things? Let's see, I talked about barcodes and annotations and people pickers. I don't have a photo of this yet because it's brand spanking new. But we've been asked by a lot of people, okay, I get it. I like your app. I like what you do with it. But why does it have to have your logo? These are my forms. And in fact, if I come here and I back out, and let's see what I want to do. Let's go to settings. And if I were to out and out log out, I will see a UI that looks something like this. You can log in directly to a regular on-premises SharePoint server as long as you have a line of sight connection to it, meaning a hole in your firewall or it's in a DMZ or something like that. Or you can use a Microsoft account as a middleman, or if it's an Office 365, you just use whatever you do to log into Office 365. We give you 3 ways to log on. But if you've already made this choice and you want your own branding and everything on it, in just a couple of months, we will have available for you the ability to skin it with your own logos, play around a little bit with the UI, not to make it not look like the app. So there is some room, but not an infinite amount of room. And you can preset the login details so that all someone has to do is put in their username and password. Where they need to go, it's already predetermined. I don't have a photograph of this yet, but I want you to imagine, if you would, your logo on this user interface. That's what it's like. And finally, there is one last thing that we're doing in order to make the wonderful world of fancy forms even fancier. And let's see. Yes, this is it. I have a Nintex form already open and I'm editing it. And it occurs to me, this is for expense reports. And I have here an item, the quantity, the unit price, and the total. And the problem here is that unit price varies if you travel to other lands and encounter other currencies. So what I would really like to do, and I'm going to fake it out, I'm not going to finish the job, but let me just take a few liberties here and drop a couple of controls in here. Because what I really need is to run a web service to calculate the currency conversion rate for whatever that is and turn it into US dollars, since we are standing on American soil at the moment. That's all right. I have this nice web service control here now. It'll be ready in a couple of months. It's not available today, but it's very, very, very close. And I come in here, and I specify under the connection what I want the control to look like. This can feed a drop-down list or a checkbox list or a table, but right now I just want it to put one value in a text box. What's the URL to the service? Are we talking SOAP or REST? What kind of method am I going to use? You need to understand what a web service is, but you're not going to have to write one line of code or mess around with any XML. We're that nice. So that's if you want to get data in real time in a form from a web service. It's one of the biggest requests you've been making on user voice. And it's just a couple of months away. You'll have it this summer. The other thing is, some of you like to keep data in databases. Who'da thunk it? Well, that's okay. We kind of like that. Here's a data access control. You want to use this to go grab data out of a database? We love that. We want you to do that, and here's everything you need in order to make that happen. In fact, if only Ignite were happening at the normal time Tech Ed took place, we'd be announcing that all this stuff was ready. But that's nevertheless a very good thing. It's on the way, and I think you're going to like it a lot. All right, let's move on. I'm still talking about data capture inside of Nintex forms and so on, but this is a company in Canada, which I'm particularly biased towards. I am Canadian. And this is the Canadian energy industry. So in Calgary, Alberta, there's a company called BGC Engineering. And they do a lot of mining, they do a lot of things. But these are all electronic forms. This one happens to be rendered in a browser, but these are rendered on iPads. Oh, the people that were doing the restaurant inspections, that had to run on a lot of different devices because they have a bring your own device policy. They don't, for their inspectors, they use whatever they have handy. They don't mandate one thing. BGC Engineering does mandate iPads, so they went crazy in terms of mapping information and specialized data entry and so on and so forth. It was done by a Nintex partner named Dynamic Owl. Now, they've done some pretty nice things, and the thing I wanted to point out here is that they back up all that data capture with a fairly elaborate workflow. And that this is a very simplified drawing of it, but it does mean that they do things like document assembly. They do things like, based on rules that are encountered when the data comes in, they might send tasks to people. And the tasks, again, show up in mobile devices. Or they might show up in browsers, or they might show up wherever they need to. Again, we love every interface you use. We'll put the right thing in the right place no matter what you're using. But yeah, of course we love mobile devices. And the other big thing is, they want to move all of this to Office 365 within a year's time, or at least they're certainly aggressively looking at how to do that to see whether they can do it. There's a company called Bronton Capital. They do asset management, and the people in IT used Nintex in a past life, and so they decided to try and do as much as they could with it. So they do a lot of development. None of it involves code. All of it involves processes and UI. They do customer onboarding. They have a self-service portal. They generate quotes. They integrate with DocuSign in order to get them signed. They're planning to add credit checks and assessments. They get stuff done in 1/10 of the time that it used to. They've asked us for things, and it turns out what they ask us for is what you ask us for, and it happens to be, conveniently, some of the things we're working on. So how about BGC in particular didn't want to move to Office 365 until we put a few more features in there. And so what kind of features do you think you want? Well, how about, let's see, let's go over here and back out of that and open up my browser, because what I want to do here is create a new workflow. What? Oh, sorry, no, I meant to do that. Yeah, I hit the wrong button. Oh, and I also need to hit the screen so that you can see my demo environment. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. All right, let's get this thing open and take a peek at it. Nintex workflow and Nintex forms evolved in parallel in Office 365. We are in the process of merging them together. Not necessarily as one app that you activate. That may happen, that might not happen, but we're making sure they work together very, very, very closely. We've also added things like being able to iterate through a dictionary and do switch operators and so on. Lazy approval made it in. This is all here, and what's going to happen very, very shortly is if I go ahead and I assign a user a task, and I'm going to stick with the default stuff. I'll just leave it with approved and rejected. That's okay. But check this out. Edit task form. Come on. Don't make me describe it to these people and paint a picture with words. Let's go to the designer. There it is. And if you've used Nintex forms on premises, you know that there are some big advantages to this approach. Our forms know they're part of a workflow process, so check this out. Certainly you would expect a task form where you're supposed to make a decision to show you the outcome options. Here's approved and rejected. And we've always been good about providing a link to click on if you want to delegate it to another person, put in some comments and so on. But, okay, these are task columns, and they show up over here on this toolbar. That's good. But you know why this is so nice? Because it's a very good idea to also present somebody with the list columns from the source object at the exact same time. Now again, we're working on this. The section that would normally appear below this where we automatically drag and drop those into place, where you can just move them around later if you want it, that's on the way. But they already show up in the toolbox. So I have access to putting in the document name and the document title. They're not necessarily the same. I'll throw in some labels and do other things. And when I run this form, they're both read-write unless I say otherwise. So imagine being able to get a link to a form in your inbox, and you don't need to go clicking around to figure out what it is you're supposed to make a decision about. Everything is in one place. We want to reduce the total amount of clicks you need to do to get anything done. And if you were in your mailbox and you got an email message, right now we have a link in there to click to go to a form, and that form will contain everything it needs. What would you like it to be like? I mean, that's great, but is there anything we could do to make it any better than that? Put the form in the email? I like the way you're thinking. I like the way you're thinking a lot. In fact, I'm not the only person at Nintex who likes the way you're thinking, and some of the people that like the way you're thinking are writing some stuff at this very, very moment. I'm not going to say anything more than that now, but the rest of you are free to extrapolate because you'll probably be right. All right. That's enough of that. What else did I want to show you? Let's see. Has anyone never heard of lazy approval? A couple of you? Okay. Lazy approval, I'll show you what it looks like. Lazy approval, the rest of you that know what it is, just indulge these people. They're very nice. They've come here for the first time, and I appreciate it. So here's the deal. Lazy approval is a little checkbox you can make when you assign someone a task. And what it means, let's go here to travel and expenses. I think this will work. Yeah, let's just launch this. The point is, if I send this off on its merry way, good. In a few moments, I would expect Jane, this is Richard? Yeah. Richard's manager is Jane. And Jane will get a notification message in her inbox in a few minutes, maybe even a few seconds. I'm going to knock on Formica and hope it's a few seconds. But what it means is, when she gets the notification email, she doesn't have to click on a link and go anywhere. She actually has the option of just replying to the email. We will parse her response and just complete the task on her behalf. We can also do this over instant messaging. We are exploring ways to do this over SMS chats. Being in the cloud makes that much easier than it was otherwise on premises. We're still evolving things on premises too. It's just some things are more conducive to the cloud version. But yes, Exchange Server doesn't always send everything immediately, and therefore I'm not going to wait around. But this time I am painting the picture because you know what an email looks like. So it's an email that says, hi, we've got this assigned task. You can click here on this link and go fill out the form, but you could also just reply. And if you reply, these are the terms I understand. Reply with one of these words, and I'll just take care of business. It's called lazy approval because lazy, to some speakers of English and some dialects, has dual meaning. It could mean, I don't want to do anything, I'm lazy. But it can also mean, I want to get it done in as little time and as little effort as possible. I'm lazy because I want to spend my energy on other things that are more important. So there's nuance. We don't tend to use lazy in that term in the United States, but that's okay. It totally fits, and it's cute and a little bit, wink in your eye kind of thing. No, that email is going to take a little bit too long to show up, so we're skipping that bit. But the last thing, to present things to you in a very nice, comfortable way. The thing I really like about the mobile UI is it puts all the work in my pocket. It's not about going to different places. It would save me the trouble of going everywhere in every site in my SharePoint environment looking for things I have to do. I have my tasks. I have my new forms I can launch to start new processes. At some point in the relatively near future, we'll even allow you to track the stuff you submitted. But in the meantime, we don't do that anywhere else. If you're in SharePoint, you have to go to the place where the process is. We do have some web parts that roll everything up so you can see what tasks are waiting for you. That is true, and the status of the workflows you've started. But we've not shown you every process you can launch until now. If you have Office 365, we have my app coming on the way. It should be ready this summer, called My Forms. And it presents you with a list of, well, you guessed it, My Forms. I really wanted the list to appear right when I said that. You've killed my mojo. Oh, okay. This particular logon thing will be gone by the time we go live with this. But in the meantime, I have to do a little extra login to Azure. Let's see, what do I need to put in here? It'll come for 365 right now because only 365 has that little waffle and a place to put my apps in there. That's not a construct in SharePoint Server 2013. As you saw this morning, there are some things that will show up in 2016 that are assisted by services that run in the cloud. So it's sort of some services on premises, some services out in the cloud. It's sort of a super hybrid server almost, right? So we may wind up doing it that way. I don't want to speculate while standing here, but look, when we have a place to put a My Apps icon that makes sense on premises, we'll look at that. In the meantime, it's only a thing in the cloud, so it's going to the cloud first. And let me try once again to type this incorrectly. to be very careful about spelling. Is that right? I think it is. Oh, come on. All right, let's try this one last time. Oh, that's why. It's a PIBCAC problem. Problem is between keyboard and chair. None of you people have ever worked in tech support, have you? That's a term support engineers use to describe a situation in which the user is the problem. Problem is between keyboard and chair. I was typing in the wrong domain name. All right. Here is a list of all the forms I'm authorized to fill out. No matter which site or which collection they live in, it's a really nice feature. And if you have icons for them, they'll show up. I didn't have any embedded yet. And you'll be able to create a list of favorites, a short list, when you want to. It will look nicer than this by the time the smoke clears. This is more than an experiment. It's probably pre-beta, but it's not going to take a long time to finish. Office 365 customers expect to see it late this summer, I think. Or very early this autumn. I'm talking about the northern summer and autumn. There are Australians, New Zealanders, and South Americans and Africans in this room. Yeah. I'm sorry? It looks like a nice thing to add to a My Site. Maybe we'll do it a different way on premises, but we're totally doing it online first. It just is. It's how we're going to do it. And then there's one other thing I want to say about people that are interested in going to Office 365. Migration is a big, big, hairy deal. And up until now, no one has been willing to try to take a classic workflow based on the .NET 3.5 workflow host that's embedded inside of SharePoint. SharePoint Designer calls this a 2010 workflow. It's really a 2010 style workflow, but that's okay. I don't mind the nomenclature. Classic 2010 style workflows, which are what we design on premises, because we wanted everything to be forward or backward compatible when we introduced Nintex Workflow 2013. We didn't want to disrupt anybody. Why? Because Microsoft offered no method for translating 2010 style workflows based on .NET 3.5 to Workflow Manager workflows, which are based on .NET 4.5. The .NET team broke compatibility with Windows Workflow Foundation 4.0. There's absolutely no one-to-one mapping pattern. And so they decided not to try. I don't fault them for that, because in SharePoint Designer and Visual Studio, they give you the option to design one or the other. Well, we said, no, if you're running on premises, we actually have gotten to great lengths to make the classic workflow host do everything you thought was attractive in Workflow Manager. We can make it do stages. We can make it do all kinds of crazy things. We know this engine well, so we'll continue to use it. Well, we've done a little bit of extra work. In fact, quite a lot of extra work. And we figured out how to migrate a 2010 workflow, or translate a 2010 workflow and convert it into a Workflow Manager workflow. Those are APIs that we've done R&D on. And we have not gotten into the migration business because, let's face it, who here wants to migrate only their workflows? Right. The way to do this properly is to work with the migration vendors who are good at migrating everything you've got, and make sure that they can also migrate our workflows, translate our workflows, and translate our forms into the new formats that live online. And I am pleased to, I'm not announcing it, we announced this last month, but I am very pleased to say that ShareGate worked with us first and released something first. They are our preferred migration partner. You can, in fact, see them migrate before your eyes. 2013 on-premises workflows to Office 365 Workflow Manager-based workflows at the Nintex booth. Come check it out. They have a booth of their own, too. Check that out. It's not to say we don't love the other guys. Nintex loves everybody. Well, almost everybody. But they're working on it, too. When they produce the ability to do this too, and we're helping them as much as we possibly can. They're going to be, we're going to skip arm in arm through the meta with them too. But they're not ready yet. ShareGate deserves the extra love for the time being, and they're totally going to get it. They totally deserve it. So yeah, look at ShareGate. They've done some awesome work on migrating SharePoint stuff, including Nintex assets, including translating it from one universe to another universe. And this was actually the biggest thing you guys have been asking us for the past 2 years. You've got it. All right, with that, we're done. This is the customary time where you ask questions, and I invite you to do that. We have 6 minutes and 58 seconds, so this is the appropriate question and answer time. In case there's always a few people here that don't care about Q&A, so, and that's okay. You don't need to care about Q&A. I just want to say, for those of you that have stayed here and listened to it and watched everything that we've been working on, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. Come check out our booth.